Have you ever wanted to just get out of LA? Or maybe wondered how you get out of the city in an earthquake when all the freeways have been knocked down? We're just wondering what is these earthquakes I'm talking about. They're going to knock down all the city, and want to know more about the geology of Southern California. If any of those are true, this is the YouTube series for you. This is Escape from LA on foot, and I am Nick Van Buur. So here I am at the Pacific Ocean. I'm just going to stop here and check to make sure this is salty. Yep, that's salty. So from here I'm going to walk 225 miles, starting by walking across the LA Basin and then over the San Gabriel and San Bernardino Mountains. And while I go, I'm going to talk about the geology we encounter in the LA Basin and local areas. Now, before I get too far up the beach, I'm in Long Beach right now. If you look out there, you'll see that there are these sort of suspicious looking islands out there. They got palm trees on them. There are a couple of them out there. If you've ever been to Long Beach and wondered what those are the, they look sort of like resorts. They got these sort of towers on them, look like condos. Those are actually oil drilling platforms. So it's just a disguise, cleverly disguised to look like some sort of resort things. So it turns out Long Beach actually sits on one of the most productive oil fields, some of the most productive oil fields in the world in terms of oil produced per acre of ground. Those oil wells belong to the Wilmington oil field, which have produced over 2.75 billion barrels of oil since they were discovered in the 1920s. And in fact, there's so much oil is produced from there that back in the 1930s and 40s, there was up to 20 feet of subsidence in parts of Long Beach due to the oil extraction, making the ground surface actually sink. And it's even been speculated that all that oil production and subsidence may have also triggered the magnitude 6.4 1933 Long Beach earthquake, which was a major devastating earthquake. So yeah, so these islands out there, the Thumbs Island, they're named for the oil companies that started up. That's Texaco, Humble, Union, Mobil, and Shell. That's where the Thumbs acronym comes from, and each of the islands is named after a NASA astronaut who died in service. Freeman, and then the Apollo 1 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Roger Chaffee, and Ed White. Okay, you caught me mid-donut, nice apple fritter here, but we've now come to the right-of-way of the Pacific Electric Railway, also known as the Red Car line. It's the Red Car Greenbelt. They now turned into a walking path. So this used to be, at some point, the largest electric railway system in the world. We think of Los Angeles as being only for cars, but back in, I don't know, 1901 or so, Henry Huntington had a different idea, which is that he could connect the whole city with electric railway, and was very successful from like 1901 until the 40s or so, maybe even the 50s. This line here in particular was the Balboa line. I think it was in operation from 1906 to 1950. So yeah, there's electric railways going all throughout Southern California. Now, the railway was only ever intermittently profitable. Henry Huntington made most of his money off of real estate speculation, basically buying up land and then putting railways there and then selling it after people moved into the areas that are now served by the railway. So once all the land was developed already, that scheme stopped making money, and eventually the electric railway went out of business, and they pulled up basically all the tracks to use the steel for the war effort. Oops. So it's pretty defunct now, but used to be a major thing in Southern California. So here in Southern California, a lot of people are aware that we're close to the San Andreas Fault, which marks the plate boundary between the North American plate and the Pacific plate. that plate boundary has about 2 inches a year of slip on it. What a lot of people don't know is the San Andreas Fault itself is only about maybe half of that slip. And so the rest of that slip is carried on a bunch of other little faults, including what we're standing right now is the Newport-Inglewood Fault. So if we look around, there's sort of a suspicious slope here. You know, Long Beach is mostly pretty flat. There's sort of this parking lot dropping down that way. There's this hill here. So it's not maybe obvious to the untrained eye, but it's an otherwise flat area. You have sort of a steep hill that goes, if you look on the topo on the map, it stretches on a straight line of these sort of hills that go all the way from Long Beach. They go through Signal Hill. Basically, when you have one of these faults, what we call a strike slip fault, where the two sides are slipping past one another, then anytime the fault isn't totally straight, the two sides of the fault bump against each other and they push up a little hill. Or in other places, if they're pulling apart, if the two sides slipping in a way that makes them pull apart a little bit, you can get a little pond or lake even, where it's the land is sinking down. But along the Newport-Inglewood Fault, mostly we have hills. We have a whole series of these hills: Signal Hill, Dominguez Hills, Cheviot Hills, Baldwin Hills. Basically all the hills in the west side of the LA basin are basically all related to the Newport-Inglewood Fault. Now the Newport-Inglewood Fault itself, the amount of slip on it isn't super well constrained, surprisingly, for being in the middle of an urban area, but it seems like maybe it slips about 2 millimeters a year. So, you know, a little under 1/10 of an inch or so. The most recent earthquake on it was the 1933 Long Beach earthquake, which was a magnitude 6.4 that killed 120 and destroyed 37 schools, which fortunately happened at 5:54 p.m. after school was out, but that could have been a lot worse. And in general, the Newport-Inglewood Fault could be a lot worse too. The Long Beach earthquake of 1933 only ruptured a limited portion of the fault. It turns out the more fault area you rupture in an earthquake, the bigger the earthquake is going to be. In principle, if the whole Newport-Inglewood Fault ruptured at once, we could get a magnitude 7.4, which would be 10 times more higher intensity, or like 32 times more energy than the Northridge quake. So that would be a very disastrous quake indeed. For people who aren't used to Long Beach, we're almost at the traffic circle here. Maybe I'll show it in a little moment, just if you're oriented where the Newport-Inglewood runs through Long Beach. Yeah, so there are a whole bunch of these little faults cutting across LA that have a certain amount of the plate boundary slip on them. Another one we'll cross later today is the Whittier-Elsinore Fault, which I think has maybe a little bit more slip than the Newport-Inglewood Fault, and passes close to downtown. The Newport-Inglewood Fault also, because it pushes up all these little random hills, the hills being pushed up causes them to be folded into these structures called anticlines, or basically the rocks are just folded upwards into a hill shape. And those anticlines form an ideal trap for oil. So the LA basin here, we'll talk a little bit more about how it formed later, but at some point, maybe, you know, 15 to 10 million years ago, there was a deep ocean basin here that filled up with the remains of dead plants and animals in the sea.
Wait.
And those turned to oil. So there's actually a lot of oil in this area. Long Beach has both the Wilmington oil field, which we already saw out by the ocean, and then the Long Beach oil field, which is sort of the area we're heading into now. Long Beach oil field is actually one of the most productive oil fields in the world by area. It produced like 1 billion barrels of oil from a 2 square mile area. And now it's got houses on it, which is maybe not necessarily the best to put our house directly on top of an oil well, because occasionally they could leak and give off methane and stuff like that. Not in Long Beach, but there's a big scandal about that recently in like Aliso Viejo, or I'll have to look that up and get you the right answer there. I forget what it was. But yeah, anyway, that's the traffic circle over there, just for reference. If we walk a little further along, you can see there's a big set of oil tanks on top of the hill on the other side. You can see there's a hill down there past the traffic circle. That's one of those hills that's been pushed up by the Newport-Inglewood Fault. Well, actually, there you can just see the oil tanks popping out over the skyline there, Hopefully I can do some sort of digital zoom.